KIBH FM 91.7. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now receive an invocation offered by Central Emergency Services Chaplain Frank Alioto. You may either remain standing or be seated. No one is required to participate. Frank, go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. Will you pray with me? As we gather here today for this meeting, we come before you with hearts open to receive your wisdom and understanding. We thank you for the opportunity to serve our community. Proverbs 3:13 reminds us, blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding. May wisdom be our guide as we deliberate and make decisions that affect the lives of those we serve. We also lift up the spirit of unity among us. Help us to set aside personal agendas and preferences and instead work together for the common good. May our differences be bridges to understanding and collaboration rather than barriers to divisions. Furthermore, we ask for grace to serve. Give us compassionate hearts to listen to the needs of our fellow citizens and the courage to act with justice and mercy. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Frank. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
President Johnson,
Here.
Vice President Cox,
Here.
Ms. Cooper,
Here.
Ms. Eklund,
Here.
Mr. Elam,
Here.
Mr. Hibbert,
Here.
Mr. Ribbons,
Here.
Mr. Tunsit,
Here.
Mr. Tupper.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Committee reports are next. We'll do Finance Committee with Chairman Peter Ribbons first, please.
Thank you, President Johnson. The Finance Committee came to order at 1400 this afternoon. We started off with a presentation by Executive Director Dana Paperman of the Seward Senior Center. She gave us an excellent presentation and quite a quick lively conversation after that. Sounds like a well-run program with quite a few options, and I was particularly interested in the concept of bingo size. From there, we went into 4 public hearing on ordinances, starting with Ordinance 2023-19-41, appropriating and allocating commercial passenger vessel tax proceeds received from the state of Alaska in the amount of $456,337.50 to the city of Seward, brought to us by the mayor. Then Ordinance 2023-19-42, accepting and appropriating $32,410.82 in grant funds from the Alaska Department of Natural Resources for the 2024 Volunteer Fire Capacity Program on behalf of Bear Creek Fire Service Area, Central Emergency Service Area, Ketchimak Emergency Service Area, Nikiski Fire Service Area, and Western Emergency Service Area, brought to us by the mayor. And I do have a clerk's note on that one saying pursuant to KPB 22.40.050F, the advisory board recommendations were updated in the ordinance 2023-19-42. Number 3, ordinance 2023-19-43, accepting and appropriating $89,000 in federal pass-through grant funds from the state of Alaska for woody fuel disposal in the communities of Cooper Landing and Hope, in approving and entering into a memorandum of agreement for the administration of funds and operations, brought to us by the mayor. And the 4th of that group, ordinance 2023-19-44, deobligating and appropriating Ketchimak Emergency Service Area capital project funds previously appropriated for the purchase of snow machines and the snowambulance for the ambulance project, also brought to us by the mayor. Then, under new business for ordinance for introduction, ordinance 2023-19-45, appropriating $627,435.60 to the Special Assessment Fund for the Princess Lake Estates Utility Special Assessment District, brought to us by the mayor. And the hearing on that one will be May 7, 2024. Ordinance 2023-19-46, appropriating $5,000 from the South Kenai Peninsula Hospital Service Area Fund Balance to provide for bond council expenditures on preliminary bond-related services, brought to us by the mayor. hearing on that one will be May 7th, 2024 as well. And then finally, for under pending legislation, ordinance 2023-19-36 appropriating $289,178.64 to the Rollins Way READ had been tabled, and I will speak to that later in our second meeting today to take it off the table. And we concluded the Finance Committee at 14:44, and that is the end of my report, President.
Thank you, Mr. Ribbons. We had a Policies and Procedures Committee, and the report will be brought to us by Chairman Mike Tupper.
Thank you. So Policies and Procedures Committee met at 3 o'clock today, and the first thing we discussed was Ordinance 2024-06, amending KPB Chapter 2.54, relating to access to public records and response to record requests. And this is a update to that code, which has not been updated in a long time, to address some specific issues. Some of those were an appeal process and addressing issues of what to do if people are using this records request to harass employees, essentially. We also took a look at Ordinance 2024-07, amending KPB code related to civil trespass and issuing a trespass order. And this is about adding tools to the borough's toolbox to be able to address issues with disruptive members of the public coming in and not going straight to, I mean, the only, in state statute, it sounds like the only recourse we have at this time would be a criminal trespass, which we're really looking for more nuanced tools for this kind of stuff. And we also looked at Resolution 2024-017, which is approving an intergovernmental cooperative fire protection agreement between the state, the Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry and Fire Protection, and the borough on behalf of all of our service areas. And this is an agreement that gets updated periodically, just outlining roles and responsibilities between state and borough fire service. Lastly, we looked at KPB 5927, confirming an appointment to the Moose Pass Advisory Planning Commission. And this is David E. Schaefer, CC, term expires 9/30/2026. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Tupper. There were some budget workshops also that begin at 1 o'clock. We had Bear Creek Fire Service Area Chief Richard Bracken made a budget review, and he also made one for Eastern Peninsula Highway Emergency Services area. And also Nick Chapman, the program manager for Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Area, presented a budget review for his group. And we had a committee of the whole where each assembly member that had participated in events or since our last meeting gave a report on the meetings that they had attended. And with that, I will look for a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda. Vice President Cox.
Yes, I move to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
Thank you. Amendments to the agenda and consent agenda. I'm going to call on Clerk Turner first.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to KPB 2240.050F, Ordinance 2023-1942, and Resolution 2024-017 was updated to include advisory board recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Other amendments to the agenda or consent agenda? Mr. Ribbons.
Thank you, President Johnson. I would move to add ordinance 2023-19-41, commercial passenger vessel tax proceeds of $456,337.50 to the city of Seward to the consent agenda, and I would ask for unanimous.
Unanimous is requested. Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing none, and you've got Assembly Member Kelly Cooper on the line, right?
That is correct.
All right, good. So just flag me down if there's anything there. All right, I don't see any, so that is added to the consent agenda. And any more?
Thank you, President Johnson. I have three more. Ordinance 2023-19-42, $32,410.82 of grant funds for the 2024 Volunteer Fire Capacity Program. I would move that we add that to the consent agenda and ask for unanimous.
Unanimous is requested. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing none, it is added. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Johnson. I move to add ordinance 2023-19-43 to the consent agenda, and this one is $89,000 for woody fuel disposal, Cooper Landing Hope, and approving entering into a memorandum of agreement, and I ask for unanimous.
Unanimous is requested. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, that is added as well. Are there any other additions?
One more, President Johnson, then I'll be through ordinance. I request adding ordinance 2023-19-44 to the consent agenda, and that one is for purchase of snow machines and snowmobiles to the ambulance project, and I ask for unanimous.
Unanimous is requested. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, that is added as well. Does any other assembly member have a amendment? Hearing and seeing no other amendment. In a moment, the clerk will read the titles of the items on the consent agenda. After she reads them, you will have an opportunity to testify about them. All items that stay on the consent agenda will be approved or set for public hearing, whichever is the case when the Assembly approves the agenda and consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
April 2nd, 2024 regular Assembly meeting minutes. Ordinance 2023-1941, appropriating and allocating commercial passenger vessel tax proceeds received from the state of Alaska in the amount of $456,337.50 to the city of Seward, sponsored by the mayor. Ordinance 2023-1942, accepting and appropriating $32,410.82 in grant funds from the Alaska Department of Natural Resources for the 2024 Volunteer Fire Capacity Program on behalf of Bear Creek Fire Service Area, Central Emergency Service Area, Kachemak Emergency Service Area, Nikiski Fire Service Area, and Western Emergency Service Area, sponsored by the mayor. Ordinance 2023-1943, accepting and appropriating $89,000 in federal pass-through grant funds from the state of Alaska for woody fuel disposal in the communities of Cooper Landing and Hope, and approving entering into a memorandum of agreement for the administration of funds and operations, sponsored by the mayor. Ordinance 2023-1944, deobligating and appropriating Kachemak Emergency Service Area capital project funds previously appropriated for the purchase of snow machines and a snowambulance to the ambulance project, sponsored by the mayor. Resolution 2024-017, approving an intergovernmental cooperative agreement between the State of Alaska, Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry and Fire Protection, and the Kenai Peninsula Borough on behalf of Central Emergency Service Area, Nikiski Fire Service Area, Bear Creek Fire Service Area, Western Emergency Service Area, and Kachemak Emergency Service Area, sponsored by the mayor. Ordinance 2023-1945, appropriating $627,435.60 to the Special Assessment Fund for the Princess Lake Estates Utility Special Assessment District, sponsored by the mayor, hearing on May 7th. Ordinance 2023-1946, appropriating $5,000 from the South Kenai Peninsula Hospital Service Area Fund balance to provide for bond council expenditures on preliminary bond-related services, sponsored by the mayor, hearing on May 7th. KPB 5927, confirming an appointment to the Moose Pass Advisory Planning Commission. David E. Schaefer, seat C, term to expire 2026. That is the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Public testimony on the consent items read by the clerk will happen now. And Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to testify?
No, sir, not on consent items.
Okay, and does anyone in the audience want to speak to any item that was on the consent agenda that the clerk just read? In the audience or on Zoom? Okay, I don't see anybody, so we will close this portion of the public hearing and bring it back to the assembly. I look for a request for approval, unanimous approval of the agenda and consent agenda as amended. Vice President Cox.
Yes, I move to approve the agenda and consent agenda as amended, and I will ask for unanimous.
Thank you. Are there any objections? Don't see any objections, so we have a agenda and consent agenda before us. And that is going to bring us to Mayor's proclamation declaring April 2024 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Mayor Micciche.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's Kenai Peninsula Borough, Alaska proclamation, whereas sexual assault is an intolerable violent crime with public health implications for every person in the Kenai Peninsula Borough, and no one person, organization, agency, or community alone can eliminate sexual assault. And whereas sexual violence prevention in the Kenai Peninsula Borough can be better addressed through education, counseling, support of victims and survivors, and increased support for service agencies in collaboration with the Lee Shore Center in Kenai, Haven House, and Homer and Seaview in Seward. Whereas the center's staff and volunteers work year-round to address sexual assault by providing 24-hour crisis. I like jelly donuts with chocolate covering. It's usually the fee. Whereas the centers and staff and volunteers work year-round to address sexual assault by providing 24-hour crisis services, offering support to those impacted by sexual assault, and providing prevention, education, and survivor empowerment information to schools, churches, and civic organizations, as well as to medical, mental health, law enforcement, education, and criminal justice personnel. And whereas the Lee Shore Center and Haven House and Seaview centers continue to develop and improve the quality of service for those most profoundly and directly impacted by sexual violence. Now therefore, I, Peter A. Micciche, Mayor of the Kenai Peninsula Borough, do hereby proclaim April 24th as Sexual Assault Awareness Month on the Kenai Peninsula, and urge all citizens to support the centers as they continue their efforts to provide hope and support and to eliminate acts of sexual violence and exploitation within the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Signed, Peter A. Micciche, Mayor, and a copy of this on the fancy paper will be sent to each of the providers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it all right with the other assembly members if we move, if you look at the bottom of the page, it says KPB 5922 presentation of athlete certificate commending resolution for Seward boys wrestling team. Can we move that to now? Is that good with everybody? Okay, let's do that now. Mayor Micciche.
Okay, Joe, if you can start them filing in. It'll take us just a moment to get set up, if that's okay, Mr. President.
That'd be perfect.
Okay. It's a giant sign and a whole bunch of wrestlers. Yeah. Hey, where's the sun?
It's coming.
Oh, we can grab it.
Stand up. Come on, you're a real man. Hop right up.
Gotta leave a place for assembly members too that want to.
Right, which is why you guys should all like take a step up.
Yeah.
There you go. There, look how tall you are.
Should this row move?
Probably should put assembly members up before we move aside.
We just got this and we're very excited about it, so you're the first to see it. So, there you go. These guys haven't even seen that if you couldn't tell. So.
Wow. All right, now everybody look at me. I promise you can look back at the sign in a second. You right there you go. Move it along.
Perhaps we should do the resolution at some point.
That's why I wanted to wait, but they said bring it in. So
Okay, here we go.
Nate, you there?
Let's, what we'll do is we'll read the resolution and then a few of us will join you and hand this to you, and we'll get interested assembly members to join as well. A resolution commending the Seward High School Boys Wrestling Team Division II Alaska State Champions for the year 2023. Whereas the Division II Alaska State Championships were held December 15, 16, 2023 at the Alaska Airlines Center in Anchorage, Alaska, and under the direction of head coach and Ketchikan Conference Coach of the Year, Brian Mullally, and, is that correct?
Yep.
Oh, I got that. And assistant coaches Nate Smith, Chris Schilling, Amanda Dozier, and Will Gentry, and support from team manager Axel Hunrain. Seahawks scored 184 points to take the Division II title, topping the 137 points of the runner-up teams. This was the second state wrestling title in school history, the last coming in 1999 when the Division II level was called Class 1-2-3A. And whereas the championship team was composed of Amos Ballard, Mesha Bidney, Ridge Conant, Alex Fink, Hunter Forshey Kurtz, Alejandro Herrera, Tommy Jarnig, sorry if I'm mispronouncing these, I'm doing my best, Emery Kircher, William Leroux, Chloe Lastimosa, Kat Knoll, Alejandro Sanchez, Aiden Schilling, Tony Smith, and John Van Buskirk. And whereas special recognitions were given to Ridge Conant as the second legacy state champion in the Seward's program's history, Hunter Forshey Kurtz as state champion and Division II outstanding wrestler, plus two-time state champion 2022 and 23. Tommy Jarnig as state champion and sportsman award recipient. Emery Kirchner for third place. Chloe Lastimosa as 2023 state qualifier. Alejandro Sanchez for third place. Aiden Schilling for state runner-up second place. The first three-time finalist in program history and two-time state champion 2021 and 22. Tony Smith for third place and John Van Buskirk for fourth place and sportsman award recipient. And whereas the team's excellent performance is a testament to their determination, commitment, teamwork, enthusiasm, and love of the sport, and a credit to their coaches, families, school, and community. And whereas all 8 members who were state qualifiers for the Division II boys tournament made it to the semifinals, a significant accomplishment. And thus all 8 placed in the top 4. And whereas this championship marks the first time in school history that the Seahawks won 3 state titles in a single meet. Rich Conant, Tommy Jarnig, and Hunter Forshey Kurtz. Whereas this 2023 team also earned second place at the Mountain City Christian Academy Tournament, first place at the Lancer Smith Memorial Tournament for Division II schools, placing 9th overall out of 38 teams in the tournament. Usually these don't take this long, but we've got a lot of excellence to fit in one piece of paper here. And whereas in all 3 divisions at the state tournament, Division I, Division II, and girls, the outstanding wrestlers were all from the Kenai Peninsula, evidence of the dynamic wrestling community here, and a source of great pride for all coaches of the sport here on the Kenai. Now therefore be it resolved by the Assembly of the Kenai Peninsula Borough that the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly commends the Seward High School boys wrestling team for their performance in winning the Division II Alaska State Championship. Section 2, that a special certificate of achievement will be presented to each member of the winning team. Section 3, that a copy of this resolution shall be given to head coach Brian Mullally. Section 4, that this resolution take effect immediately upon its adoption. Adopted by the Assembly of the Kenai Peninsula Borough this 27th day of February 2024. Remember, we passed this back a couple months back. We wanted to present it here, signed by myself, Borough Mayor, Assembly President Brent Johnson, and Borough Clerk Michelle Turner. So congratulations to the Seahawks. See you back there. Hop up on that bench. Axel? He's not here. Alejandro Herrera. Did I say it right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And Mr. Sanchez. Here. And Alex Fink. Oops. So open them like so you can see it for the photo, and then assembly members, Amos Ballard. Not here. Chloe. Not here. Emery. Hunter. John Van Busker. Cat. Mesha. Bridge. Tommy. Tony. And Williams. All right, so, guys, you want to join in? And I'll, Coach, let's get you out here right now.
All right.
Give you this, give you a little handshake. You guys hold up your wings. Goes up to kneel in front.
All of us up here, Mayor, or just a few?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get up there by mission.
That's it.
You haven't taken a picture like this since you were wrestling, right? All right.
Get everybody?
Yeah, I can get everybody. I'm
Try
trying
to
not to
get
the
back up. That's
Trying not to get the table. That's why we got a team. Perfect.
Okay, wait for the parents now.
All right.
Don't move.
All right, congratulations.
Yeah, you too, thank you.
A lot of you guys are like starting to collect these, right? I think some of these names for football and track.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Grab it in.
Starting to make a habit of this.
We're gonna walk around town now for a couple hours.
You know, they make those out of Corex.
Yeah.
Going on the wall.
Oh.
Appreciate your time, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is presentations with prior notice, and we will have a presentation from Kenai Public Health Nurse, Nursing Alaska Department of Health, Julie Bunch, Public Health Nurse, and she is on Zoom. Go ahead, Julie, when you're in.
Okay, hello, are you able to share my slide?
Yes, Julie, I will share your slides if you could just let me know when you're ready to advance to the next one.
Okay, sounds great. So good evening, Assembly members and your YouTube. I'd just like to touch base on some communicable and infectious disease awareness, including waterborne illness on the Kenai Peninsula. On the next slide. Oh, so are you sharing? I can't see it on my phone. The first thing I'd like to talk about is measles. There was a health alert that came out from the CDC recently. In 2024, there have been 121 cases of measles. Okay. And just go back one slide to that measles. Of that 121 cases, there were approximately 47% of those were under 5 years old, and 82% were unvaccinated or unknown vaccination status. Next slide. Also, I just want to talk about pertussis, known as, you've probably heard that as whooping-cough. It's a serious illness and highly contagious, as is measles, especially detrimental in infants under 1. It is spread through cough and sneezing. It can cause violent, uncontrolled coughing fits that can last for up to 10 weeks. This is vaccine preventable. It is recommended that children under 7 years of age get the series of DTaP, and adolescents a Tdap, and also for teens and adults every 10 years. Of kiddos or infants that do get pertussis, 1/3 of babies will be hospitalized, and 1 in 100 of those infants hospitalized, one will lose their life, even with treatment. We have seen an uptick of this on the peninsula with 5 recent cases in March and April. Next one. I just want to show you how this correlates locally with vaccination rates. If you look under the Gulf Coast, you'll see, first I'd like to look at MMR. One childhood series, which is a child who received their first vaccination at 12 months of age, you can see that 73% are vaccinated. Now for measles, you need to have a 95% threshold for herd immunity. So you can see we're under that threshold here. So this makes it a great concern. We have not seen any outbreaks of measles in Alaska as of yet. And regarding pertussis, if you go up to DCAP, it lessens. Only 60% of kiddos are vaccinated fully for pertussis. So this is very concerning. We're working to try and increase these immunization rates, but also with adult immunization rates. If adults are not getting that Tdap, they can also develop whooping cough and then infect the infant. Next slide. I'm changing it up here. I just want to talk about syphilis for just a moment. It's a sexually transmitted disease. Next slide. Alaska has one of the highest rates nationally. Next slide. Congenital syphilis is on the rise in Alaska. And so what we are doing is we are educating the public on getting pregnant women to get tested at least once during their pregnancy. It is recommended to get tested 3 times. In the beginning of pregnancy, the 3rd trimester, and after delivery. And I wanted to show this little graph here that 1 in 5 people in the U.S. have an STI, sexually transmitted infection. So that's 68 million infections, and that was in 2018. And just how that correlates to $16 billion in medical costs. But what we really want to do is just get the word out that syphilis is on the rise. It is in Alaska, and it is on the peninsula. Next slide. So Peanut Public Health, one of the things we have just started recently, as well as the state of Alaska, the Department of Health, is we are handing out free pregnancy test kits, and we are promoting that STI awareness and early testing and providing that knowledge for individuals so they will go and see their provider. Next one. Regarding foodborne and waterborne illness, I just wanted, we do epidemiology, we do case investigations for reportable food and waterborne illness, and we are seeing cases of Campylobacter, E. coli, and Salmonella on the Kenai Peninsula. We've had quite a few recently, especially Campylobacter. So we want to raise awareness about many individuals on the peninsula have chickens or they have other livestock. So we want to get the message out to really make sure that if you're out and about with your animals, you're changing your shoes before you go in the house, if you are wearing them, take them off. And also do that hand washing, be aware if your animals are ill, and also be aware of untreated water. You could also get these infections through untreated water. And these are intestinal infections, and they are spread through fecal oral route. Next slide. And here again, I just wanted to highlight that families and flocks don't mean it. You can go to the CDC website and learn more about some safe practices for especially with poultry, which many individuals do have them. Next slide. Again, this is just highlighting some of the things we've been doing. We did notify all child care providers, also the supervisor with the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District, as well as providers of health care about the measles and just ensuring that their clients are immunized, and if not, just trying to improve those rates. And also educating on those signs and symptoms of measles. We have also provided awareness at Central Peninsula Women's and Babies Health Fair. We're trying to get the message out there for all of these reportable illnesses. And if you, next slide. And thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, feel free to.
Thank you, Julie. Let me see if there are questions. I don't see any. I appreciate the information on the vaccines. And I guess that's going to be it. Thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Next, we're going to do a public hearing, public comments on items not appearing on the agenda. Does anyone have anything to say that is not on the agenda? Madam Clerk.
Phil Kaluza.
Thank you. Mayor and Borough Assembly members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening in person. It's wonderful. Thanks for coming. My name is Phil Kaluza, Seward resident, and I guess for the record, I'm an appointed member of the Resilience and Security Advisory Commission, RSAC. But I speak to you this evening as a borough resident. Over the past 5 years, I've been actively involved promoting heat pumps and the efficiency of air source heat pumps in Seward. I believe we currently have around 100 cold climate heat pumps in Seward currently. But millions of cold climate heat pumps are installed around the world, with Norway, Sweden, Finland leading the charge. Cold climate states with little natural gas available, such as Maine, are leading the U.S. In Alaska, we have cold climate heat pumps installed in the Arctic and through the southeast Alaska. Interesting, recently Northwest Arctic Borough communities just received funding for 850 cold climate heat pumps in the Northwest Arctic region. Cold climate heat pumps are working in Alaska and around the world. They will work in Homer area as well. Recently, RSAC proposed a pilot project to install 1 or 2 heat pumps in Port Graham and or Napoleon across the bay, which rely on expensive propane for space heating. The economics of utilizing the heat pumps to supplement the existing heating system will result in a 50% decrease in the cost for every gallon of propane displaced with a heat pump, and a 50% reduction in carbon emissions, a win-win for everyone. As a borough taxpayer, I'm a strong believer in educating our kids. But I, for one, would prefer we spend our tax dollars educating and less on space heating with expensive fuels when proven alternatives exist. I hope the Kenai Borough administrative staff take the time and do the math. Start simple, plan ahead to expand the heat pumps to all the schools in our district that do not have natural gas, and that includes Seward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kluge. Hold on one second. There might be questions. I wouldn't be surprised.
I charge extra.
So then I'm going to ask one because nobody else has got their hand up. And so, do you install these?
I've installed a few, but I am not an installer.
Okay.
But
So,
we do have several installers in Seward that install.
and in Seward, because there's 100 here, As of 2 weeks ago, I just learned that. I didn't know these things were around. So what is your opinion on, are the heat pumps that just use air more advantageous as the ones that they bury in the ground compared to the ones that use a lake or a water body?
Well, that all depends, but the air is the least expensive. And so for a smaller home or facility, the air source heat pumps seem to have an economic advantage and cost-wise. But I certainly support all heat pumps, and if it turns out a school could afford to do something more complex like ground source or ocean source or whatever, that would be great too, but we just need to do the math.
Okay, thank you very much. One last question. So electricity is more expensive, I think, in Seward, but I could be wrong. I just heard that the price of electricity had gone up recently. Now, heat pumps use quite a bit of electricity, but then when I drove into town, I noticed that your fuel price is more over here as well. So give me just a little bit of feedback on what you save and how the price of electricity factors into this.
Okay, well, I mean, the basic economics, you know, for oil heat, it takes about 12 kilowatts of electricity to equal the same amount of heat as a gallon of oil. So at 25 cents a kilowatt in Homer, that's $3 a gallon equivalent. But when you go to propane, which has less heat and it's more expensive, that actually turns out to be more like 8, 9 kilowatts of electricity. So it's only a couple dollars a gallon equivalent to you know, replace propane. So yeah, no, the price of electric and the price of your fuel is kind of the secret to it all. And right now, you know, our rates have gone up a little bit, so the economics of owning a heat pump have gone down, but they're still in a positive. And I think as price of oil continues to go up, you know, we'll continue to be cost effective.
Thank you very much, Rob. Mayor Machicki.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Kalusa. I can assure you, as a board member of the Sea Life Center and seeing the transformation we saw in our energy costs by going to a heat pump system, which was astounding, and not knowing the future of what natural gas and other potential looks like here on the Kenai, as well as rising electricity prices. We have been discussing this since the last meeting. We're going to look at the best options possible, and if it ends up being an air source heat pump, so be it. We appreciated that. My only complaint was the budget implications without prior planning. And we have adequate budgeting in the energy sources for our buildings in the borough that it could be a midterm project if we determine that it's best for one of those schools. So I appreciate bringing it forward. Again, my only issue was the budgetary impacts without having the opportunity to engage.
Sorry, that's above my pay grade.
Thank you, Mr. Coogan. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Madam Clerk.
Mark Beals.
Hello, my name is Mark Beals. Thank you. Hello, my name is Mark Beals. I've lived in Seward for over 50 years. I live at 33946 in the Bear Creek Fire Service area. I was a fire chief there for a number of years, had over 30 years as a volunteer there, and was the last volunteer chief in the borough. In 2007, we took to the voters to approve a 1% or 1 mil rate increase to pay for a building bond if we got another $2.5, $3 million, and that passed. So several years later, we were able to acquire the additional money, and that bond was activated. So at the time, that bond was supposed to bring in about $100,000. That bond, that 1 mil, now brings in about $323,000. So the bond payment's less than $100,000. I think it was $86,000 and some change in the budget stuff. So that's over $200,000 that been generated over that voter-approved bond. And I realize there's been inflation, but really that money should go for the building and long-term capital replacements like funding for a boiler in the future and those type of things. When I had the budget, I think my highest budget was about $350, and when Connie Bacon was chief, she had about $500,000. Now it's $1 million. Everybody will say my budget was heavily dependent on grants, and it was. We went after every grant there was. There was just the Assistance for Firefighters grant that closed for firefighter safety and public safety for $324 million that closed last month. I don't think a lot of those grants are being applied for. We need to get back to being very dependent on grants and less on the taxpayers. I hope in the future that the assembly and the mayor will look at decreasing the mill rate by a quarter, and then as things progress and we get increased revenue out that, since 2016, property values in Seward has raised 30 to 40%. That's just going to keep going up. So in the last 8 years, we've seen 30, 40% increase, and that's going to continue to grow. So I think we've got the opportunity to lower the mill rate over the next 10 years a couple times, like 0.25%. Anyway, I know there's temporary wages in there. I don't know if we need that. We only do 150 calls a year, and Richard's got an excellent response time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. And I don't see any questions, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
And Madam Clerk, anyone else? Anyone from the audience who would like to testify?
You gotta push the button.
Thank you. My name is Brad Snowden. I'm a Seward resident, and I'm here for one reason, and I don't know if Mayor Menchiki has thought of it yet, but I think I'd like to nominate him, if I could be nominating, for governor of our state, because in November, we're gonna need a new governor, and we've got the right man right here. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Mr. Snowden, I appreciate it. There is one person that wants to have their mic on and would like to ask you a question, Mr. Snowden.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the mayor himself. I can't tell.
I've known all the governors personally. I'd like to say that, and he has the same wonderful foundation that these governors have had. Thank you.
That's very nice of you, Mr. Snowden. I have seen your name on ballots before, and I think you should consider 2026 again as well.
So, thank you.
Thank you, that was it. Anyone else care to testify? And no one on Zoom. Okie dokie, we will close that portion of the public hearing, and we will be back for... Oh, mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's great to be here in Seward. I'm glad we made that change. I enjoyed the Homer meeting, and this is great as well. So it's nice to see you all. It's nice to have someone show up. So I appreciate you being here. Anyway, I have the contracts. I want to go into a little detail because it's kind of Seward-centric tonight. We have the authorization for the Seward Bear Creek Flood Service Area Upper Salmon Creek revetment, which is a $133,000 contract. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit from my report. We also landed a $655,000 congressional designated spending grant for really getting ahead of the game. And Nick left, Mr. Chapman left a little earlier, but he's doing a heck of a job. And I honestly think, I hate to say this because when you say it, you're going to be wrong, but I feel like we're getting really far ahead of the game these days to the point where we can depend on adequate flood control going forward. And I'm really proud of that program and all the folks that have assembly support, folks on this side on the board, and Nick and his team. Things are moving in the right direction. So I'm kind of happy about that. And then Today I signed the Seward High School track contract. It came in below what we expected. And as you know, the school bond's passed and we're really struggling with which projects we can complete just because of the escalation that occurred after that. Inflation's a real thing. It's a thief in the night. It's been extreme. Everything's more money. And we're working with the district to try to prioritize in a way that is satisfactory to them and the taxpayers that support that bond. Then there's a gym and locker contract for the district as well, and the spring land sale marketing and auction services. So I think you all know about the May 11th land sale. I brought a little pamphlet here with me. There's some exciting opportunities all over the borough. Take a look, bid often. Hopefully you end up with a piece of borough property. There's some key meetings. I've been meeting with school district folks. I met with Austin Stevenson, Soldotnell, just and talking about the reality of these challenges on that bond. It's a real thing. And we were able to work out on the fire department bond for CES, the new station. We're there, but it was a lot of work and a much different footprint than what we expected originally. It's going to take that kind of work to get the rest of the bond moving. I was appointed to the National Fish Habitat Partnership. My first meeting is at the end of the month in DC. I think that's pretty important. It's funny when now reviewing the notes from years ago on some of the fisheries that they are dealing with versus the enormity of Alaska and our dependence on healthy fisheries and fisheries resources. I think that'll be an eye-opener and could result in some funding. We've had several meetings lately on campus property for our hospitals. We lease at an exorbitant cost year after year, never any closer to owning those properties, never them being a part of our campuses to expand our hospitals in the future. And we've had some pretty good progress on meetings with folks about purchasing some of that property, and the economics we're using is the cost of the lease over time. The Homer properties, we beat the cost of the lease, which doesn't come with ownership and expansion. It just comes with a forever lease. We're trying to do the same thing in Central Peninsula Hospital. Been to a few fundraiser dinners, Kenai Senior Center, got to be the auctioneer at the Celebrity Waiter Fair fundraiser last week, and I couldn't get the Senate President to bid. I really need to work on my auctioneer skills, and I don't know. I think his wife wanted to raise it, but he just had her arm clamped so tight. I had a meeting with Mayor Navarre. One of the key issues for the Kenai Peninsula Borough is the 53,000 acres that is still owed to us by the state. My impression is they're never going to release that property without significant action on our part. And we've been jumped in the line by several other entities, which is also a legal issue. Our standing is in 1964, we became a borough. We've been surpassed by other entities that didn't have standing at the time. So I met with Mayor Navarre because he had a little more history in the entitlement issue from years ago. We've had no forward progress, so you'll be hearing more from us on efforts to have reasonable survey requirements that don't change every time you get close to securing a piece of property, for hopefully getting our original standing back. It's very important. Land at the borough is the seed corn of not only our borough as an entity, but future communities as we grow. And we're entitled to that land. I met with Heidi Stokes from Chapman School. We're looking at options. So as Homer has become, just like Seward, very tight on housing issues. If you've watched any of the Kenai Peninsula Borough Mayors Working Group, we've been focused on that. And therefore, folks are moving north to Anchor Point, and Chapman is bursting at the seams. And their drop-off pickup is hazardous at best. On the highway, folks are lined up, kids getting out of cars on the highway, and So we're looking at some options that might give us some additional space to allow them to go, get off the highway, go around the school and come back out. So we're meeting with them in the district to work on some of those things as well. A lot of land management meetings on a comprehensive land plan for the borough. I think you know we're working on some subdivisions for residential potential that hopefully Mr. Borough Attorney can come to the results that borough residents get first shot. So we're not competing with speculators from somewhere else, which we've been a victim of on the Kenai Peninsula for a very long time. I'm a free market guy. If the state of Alaska could require residency for their land sales, by golly, we should be able to require a residency for a first shot at ours. So working on that. There's been some challenges in the past, but I think we can find our way around them. We had our second ALICE training at the Assembly Chambers, just keeping our employees informed and safe, give them a thought about what to do, God forbid, whatever. And I think it's important to make sure that they are prepared. We met last week with Curtis Thayer. He came to the office. He's the executive director of the Alaska Energy Authority. We talked about a lot of the potential for projects around the state. It was got an interesting meeting, grid resilience projects and other renewable potential. So if you have an opportunity to see Mr. Thayer's presentation, it was interesting. Friday on the 12th, I'm getting toward the end here, I attended the Arctic Mayors Forum and the Alaska Mayors Networking meeting in Anchorage, which is pretty fascinating. It's mayors that are similarly situated to us from not only Alaska, but Norway, Finland, Sweden, Iceland. Some of those communities, not only socially, but energy-wise, and we have our differences. We got a little discussion about the tax rate. but frankly, a lot of their solutions can reduce the burden on our residents as well, and have a lot more promise than some of the old-fashioned ways we've been doing things. I was all ears, and it was a great meeting. I'm going to be more involved with that group. Today, I did the welcoming remarks at Transportation Gaps and Solutions on the Kenai. Everyone was there. It was a great attendance. I think things are moving. They published a little document that talks about who serves where and the cost of rides and things like that. As we found with the housing discussion, a lot of the pieces are there, but no one's talking to each other. No one's coming to the table saying, hey, how about we pick up this segment, you pick up the next segment, this is how we'll interact at that intersection. So I'm really hoping they're getting close to some of those solutions, as I think we could be with some of the housing solutions as well. Working on capital budget issues. We have a couple of things that we've had in the capital budget. We're working on some others. Senate passed it over. If our 3 House members work together, we could have some real potential for some of the things that have been long-standing problems that need to be solved. It's not big money stuff. It's not going to be a big money capital budget, but some of the things we need is seed money for other projects that we need to see get across the finish line. And I said earlier we were successful with the 655 for Bear Creek, 2.74 million for the Central Peninsula landfill gas collection, and 5 million for South Peninsula Hospital asset improvement. Big deal. And we're thankful to our delegation, congressional delegation, for delivering that funding for some key projects. So that concludes my report, unless there are questions, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions? Vice President Cox.
Yes, thank you. And I have 2 questions. First one, I wasn't sure if it was said, I don't believe it was. If it was, I apologize. But for the Seward High School track, did we have an idea when that start date was to be able to start that work?
You can text me, John, or you can go up to the mic and prove that I have no idea when it's starting.
Thank you. We just signed there, so the mayor just signed the authorization to award. It'll hit my office once that returns, and we'll give them notice to proceed after we give them a quick phone call and talk about what their schedule is. So an exact date I don't have, but I'm guessing that there's probably lead times on materials, midsummer heavy construction activity, and then hopefully finish as early as we can in the fall.
Thank you. And then my second question is for the mayor. It was brought to my attention that last week you publicly stated that you do not plan to fund to the cap for school districts. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that for us, because I am starting to get some calls from people because of that statement, so I didn't know where you were sitting, because I don't think a number or anything like that was said.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we plan to get all the details out so that people understand why we're making the statements we're making. Because of the increased valuation, if we were to fund to the cap, the borough would be out of money in approximately 4 years. Out of money. The valuations essentially come in the door and go out. The increased valuations come in the door and go out the door in the form of school funding. So we are on a 2.5% curve for the borough budget. Their original request was for 56 million. Last year we paid 54. That's a 4% increase. We honored the request for 56 million. Then the higher valuations came in and they changed the request for 58. So I will give you all the details why that would be very difficult. And it would lead to the point where you're going to be adding a couple of mills within 4 years just to pay the school bill while the state stays flat. So we've increased our proportion of funding dramatically through the years. And since 2017, there's not going to been a penny of increase in the BSA. There's been a little bit outside. The pressure should be on the state and we would be fine. Now, I'm willing to adjust depending on what happens in Juneau. Right now, there's 640 in the budget. If that doesn't come through, I'm willing to adjust at this point so that we can support our school district as much as possible. The details you'll see is we're literally the most generous in the state with similar situated boroughs who don't fund near the cap. And we are at 56, would be far more generous than the others. We want to support our schools. We want them to be adequately financed. However, we can't do it all ourselves. So my goal is to continue working with the folks in Juneau. I have been called to assist on getting something across the finish line that will fund our schools, and then we'd be fine. If not, we can have a follow-up conversation. Of course, we'll have lots of conversations through the budget cycle, but if when I get to the point of demonstrating the charts to you, you'll see why it's extremely problematic.
Thank you. I appreciate the explanation, and I too am hopeful that the state will come through with the funding that's presented as of right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other questions for the mayor? I don't see any. That's going to zip us to our agenda all the way up to ordinance 2024-06. So if I could have a motion to enact the committee report, please, Chairman Ribbons.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and take that because it was in my committee.
It was in your committee, even though my thing says Ribbons on. All right, I'm super with that.
But I would move to enact ordinance 2024-06, amending KPB chapter 2.54 relating to access to public records in response to records requests. And committee report is this is an update to old section of code that hasn't been updated since 1986, and it addresses a few things. Among those included are updates to the way that records requests come in, because that's changed to a centralized system at this point. And then also some language augmenting provisions related to costs and fees and establishing a process to appeal record request denials. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tupper. We will now go to the public for public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to ordinance 2024-06? Please come forward.
Hi there, is this on?
This is
I'd like to ask for you guys to actually read the ordinance so that it is clear what it says. It does not say updating the code from 1986. The code was updated in 2015. 86 code is the Alaska statute. This is going to be a violation of the Alaska statute that is in charge of public records, the Alaska Public Records Act, which is also through FEMA. FEMA is the Freedom of Information Act. You guys don't get to make up laws. You have to follow the federal and the Alaska Public Records Act. I'd like you guys to read it to the public so they know what it says, because that's not what it says. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Nick? Hearing and seeing none, thank you. Anyone else in the audience care to speak to ordinance 2024-06? Or on Zoom? Okay, don't see any other commenters. I will close that portion of the public hearing and bring it back to the assembly for assembly discussion. Vice President Clark.
Yes, I have a question, and this would be directed actually towards either the clerk or our attorney. And the question actually is about, does enacting this, can you see in any way that this prevents someone from getting to any documents that they would have been able to get to now?
Through the President, Vice President Cox, no, sir. It is not written to prevent anyone from being able to access records. The only thing that it is, well, one of the things that it is doing is clarifying the process. It was unclear with current code how that process actually functioned.
May I follow up?
Go ahead.
So, and tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from you is that people will still have the same access, it's just clearing up how you go about that process.
Vice President Cox, yes, that is correct. It's also adding some additional language that didn't exist previously, that Sean spoke about at committee, and also clarifying that our new public records portal is how the process is, well, how the process is started. I guess I'll say it that way.
May I ask one more?
Go ahead.
This would be to Mr. Kelly. On that same topic that Ms. Turner just said, anything that you added, does that eliminate or make it so somebody can't get to public documents like they could before this change?
No, I'd say, through the chair, Mr. President, if it's a public record, then access remains the same. The public's going to have access to public records.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bill.
Thank you. I've read through all of the ordinance and the amendments and changes and everything to code, and it doesn't really look like it changes the process in a way that creates any additional barriers to somebody being able to get the records or to being able to access public information. Is there anything in here that you're aware of that would cause any kind of a delay for somebody trying to access records?
And you're asking,
I think
Ms. Clark?
yeah, yes.
Through the President, Mr. Elam, no, sir. It is not going to prevent anyone from being able to access.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize if the question was redundant, but thank you.
Okay, and Mayor Machicki.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to make it clear to the public that we want you in the building and we want all of your questions answered every day. When you have a legitimate question that you need, this clarifies the process so that you know where to go, who to approach for the paperwork, how to make the request properly so that we understand what records you're pursuing and you will get them in a very timely manner. We want to make it easier for the public that legitimately wants information from the borough, and I feel like this process clarifies that. It also clarifies records that are not open to disclosure. And I don't know that it was particularly clear before. It is now. Our goal is that everyone that legitimately has interest in borough records will receive them in a timely manner in a controlled process that is the same for everyone looking for records. Doesn't matter if we like you, doesn't matter if we don't like you, doesn't matter if you're popular and well-connected, or you're just someone off the street that wants to know how something works, you're going to get your records.
Thank you, Mayor. We are discussing the motion to enact 2024-06. Further discussion? Vice President Cox.
I would like to ask for unanimous consent.
Unanimous is requested. Is there any objection? None on Zoom, none here. The motion passes then unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to ordinance 2024-07, and I take it this is Mr. Tupper.
Yes, it is. So I'd move to enact ordinance 2024-07, amending KPB code related to civil trespass and issuing a trespass order. In the committee report, what we talked about this afternoon was that this is a way for the borough to put some tools in place for them to react to public that come into the public spaces in the buildings and cause a disruption. And this is a kind of a stopgap between, right now, you know, we could file something for criminal trespass, but that seems it seems overkill for what we're looking to really be able to provide. So this is just putting in the code the ability for the borough to act before it gets to that level.
Thank you, Mr. Tupper. I will open this up for a public hearing. Madam Clerk, see Ms. Hudnett. Is there anyone in the public that would like to testify to ordinance 2024-07? Please come forward, Mr. Connors.
So, I'm sure I'll be heard just as I was before. I really would like people in the public to look at these ordinances. In the ordinance, it doesn't just say that you'll be trespassed from borough property. You'll be trespassed from any property adjacent to borough property. They are creating law because they don't want to be held accountable. I had brought to this these government officials and their employees that are also government officials some numerous problems, and they're tired of me bringing to them problems like the fact that the ADA is not updated on the website right now. It goes to Johnny Blankenship. The fact that right now, if you go online, it says the meeting location for this meeting says to be determined. They're not doing their jobs, but they have all this time to put these ordinances to take away our freedoms and our rights. And I'd just like to say thank you, Your Majesties.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. Anyone else from the public? Or on Zoom? Okay, I don't see anyone. We will close this portion of the public hearing, bring it back to the assembly for your discussion. Vice President Cox?
Yes, this would be for Mr. Kelly, I believe. Through in the writing of this, is the way I understand this is this can be very much tailored to very specific situations, time frames, areas, all that kind of thing. If you could elaborate a little bit on that, please. And I guess going towards the idea of trying not to eliminate people's availability to the borough and borough services.
Thank you, through the president. First, I must respond because it was inaccurate. The word adjacent is nowhere in this ordinance, so it is for borough facilities. It is time limited of 24 months that the trespass order would be, and must provide alternative options to access borough services.
May I follow up?
Yes.
So it would be very much of concern that any services that a trespass would eliminate, there would be an alternative way for that person to get the same, or a similar service to have the same outcome.
Through the president, yes, that's correct.
Further discussion? Oh, Mr. Eden?
Thank you. I guess I have kind of two questions. And one is as I read this, this doesn't limit access or even really define access any different than what it currently is. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that it allows for a more moderate or mild approach to a trespass should something arise, a less strict or less, instead of being a civil trespass, it would be, or I'm sorry, can you explain the trespass thing for me just a minute? Thank you.
Yes, through the president, Mr. Elam, and I think Mr. Tupper summarized it as well as it is a step below escalation of criminal charges, and especially where state law and borough code is currently absent on the borough's ability to issue a trespass order. So it would be a civil action, would be something that violated that we went to civil court on, not criminal court. And like I said, I would agree with Mr. Tupper that it's a step below that escalation to law enforcement.
And this doesn't inhibit anybody's ability to be able to come in to any of our facilities or change any of their access from the public?
No, sir.
Mr. Tunson.
Thank you, President Johnson. I just wanted to reiterate a couple of the questions that I asked earlier and maybe get Sean's response again. The concerns that I had were really just that one, it wasn't actually creating something that already existed. And I had heard that maybe this had existed in state law already, and so I didn't want to be duplicative if we didn't have to be. But it sounded like maybe that wasn't the case, and so could you just sort of elaborate on what you had talked about with the previous kind of state law? I think you had mentioned something related to a courthouse and why that wasn't done, but just to restate for the larger audience here, please.
Yeah, so state law provides a general criminal trespass provision that provides for public, it's applicable to public or private facilities where if the person in control or charge of the building asks somebody to leave and they don't, they can be charged with a crime of criminal trespass in the second degree. It doesn't spell out the ability to provide any kind of temporal limits of saying, don't come back for 6 months, a year, ever, whatever the case may be. That is a clear ability of private property owners to do, including businesses. It's trickier and for public facilities to trespass for a time period. And so since that's currently not in state law, there's nothing in Title 29 or any of the criminal code provisions under Title 11 or otherwise, then we are looking at this as when faced with such issues, we don't really have that mechanism to issue a trespass order under either state law or borough code currently.
Okay, Mr. Mayor Machiki.
No, I think it's important to say a few things. I've been mayor for a little over a year, right? And we have placed the 60,882 residents of this borough at the top of our org chart. We're wide open. We want people in the building. When we've had difficult people, which we do all the time, so we do. So we do best. People come in upset about their valuation increases, their roads, the landfill not being open on Sunday, which it is now, so we haven't gotten those calls in a while. School stuff, people come in pretty upset, parents upset about things with their kids. It's not what we do, we send them across the hall to the other entity in the building, but we're really good at hearing them. It's okay if they're angry. Certain departments at a certain time of year have lots of angry people. We don't care if they're angry. We're going to deal with them if they're respectful and they're not threatening. We've recently been sweet, kind, and as responsive as possible to certain individuals that are obsessed. And it's difficult. We don't want them to enter the criminal justice system. That was the suggestion months ago. That's not what I'm going to do. We want to work with those individuals, and we have. After tens of thousands of dollars of borough time, when behavior gets strange, we need to have a softer way to deal with it. That's what this is about. And that's all this is about. I would assume that of 60,882 people, 60,881 of them will never be affected by these changes. And we hope that all 60,882 are ones that never experience us getting to the point where we feel access to our buildings should be restricted for a time. So our goal is not to ever have to use this ordinance. I appreciate you passing the other ordinance. I think that'll be easier for everyone, a clear process. This one is one that we hope gets real dusty and stays unused. Just wanted to clarify that position because people will turn things into something else. And we should talk about things the way they are. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Further discussion? Vice President Cox.
Yeah, I would like to ask for unanimous consent.
Unanimous has been requested on ordinance 2024-07. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, that ordinance passes as well. That is going to bring us to public comments and public presentations. Madam Clerk, is anyone signed up to comment? Is there anyone from the audience who would like to comment on anything that's on your mind? Maybe it's spring and you're feeling a little chipper and want to say something. Or on Zoom. You know, sometimes spring is just that way. And so I will close this portion of the public hearing and bring it back to the assembly. And we'll just start with Kelly Cooper online to see what she has to say for assembly comment.
I have no comments, thank you.
Kelly, we missed you. Want you to know that and get better quick. Mayor Machiki, would you like another go?
No, thank you. Thanks for being here in Seward, and thanks to Seward folks for showing up. We'll see you next year. Thank you.
And thank you. And Mr. Tupper.
Similarly, just want to say I'm glad to have an opportunity to come to Seward, and that's all for me this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Tupper. And Cindy, we're in Cindy City.
Thank you, President Johnson. I want to congratulate our boys and girl wrestling champions. Many of the boys were in the room tonight, but we do have some girls that like to do that as well. And I also want to just mention that we have a champion football team that goes to our school, and I would hope that they have a place to play football this fall, since they were state champions last year, and I'd like to offer them that opportunity again this coming year. I want to thank the Seward High School Theater Collective for 6 performances up at the high school of Alice in Wonderland. It was magnificent. Just preschool to high school were all involved, and there was music and dance, even though our school doesn't have those things, music or dance or choir. Yesterday, the theater collective group invited the elementary students and the middle school students to a performance, and then they invited Hope, Cooper Landing, and Moose Pass students as well to come to their performance free of charge. I really want to thank the Seward residents that came out tonight, our Seward city manager and city clerk, our Seward chamber rep Sam Case is here, and other city administrative staff as well. Thanks. And that's it for me tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Eklund. Mr. Elam.
Thank you. It was a good meeting tonight. I appreciate everybody coming out. Seward, your hospitality was nice. Thank you for showing up. Congratulate the wrestling team. They did a great job, and it was nice to be able to come down here and have them unveil their sign and see everybody. Last week, had the opportunity, my sons go to Aurora over there in Kenai, and the 4th grade had their business day. And so all of the kids found some kind of a business, including a jail. My son chose to do Nerf guns and dinosaurs. And so we shot at Nerf, charged everybody a $1 or $2. But anyhow,
the school managed to have the most successful business day fundraiser that they've had yet. And so it was a lot of fun. And I mean, there was hundreds of people there and lots of parents all involved. And I think, you know, we've got some really good things going on here on the Kenai. And I'm glad we're able to highlight some of those things. And so again, thanks for everybody coming out tonight and good night.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Tunseth.
Thank you, President Johnson. Just a few things here. First of all, thank you to the community of Seward. You guys really had great hospitality. We had fantastic dinner at Apollo's. It was like really good and everybody enjoyed it. And for all the people that showed up today, including the media to cover this, I think that's important and appreciate you guys being here as well. A couple things going on in Kenai. On the 17th, there'll be a joint luncheon for the state of Kenai. So that'll be Terry Eubanks giving the presentation about the state of the city of Kenai. And then on the 1st, there'll be a joint chamber lunch with the Boys and Girls Club of the Kenai Peninsula, talking about the Royce and Melba Roberts Center and all of the Boys and Girls Clubs that operate in the peninsula, including Seward's. And so that'll be interesting. And then the 20th and 21st is the Mother's Day Bazaar. So everybody tell your mother Happy Mother's Day. And then just finally, I mentioned this in committee, but I just can't resist. I got to mention it again. The KMS Math Counts team won the state Math Counts competition. It's a state competition amongst private and public schools across the state are all included. So math still matters and public schools still do okay on outcomes. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Mr. Hibbert.
Thank you, President Johnson. Thank you, Seward. Appreciate coming out here tonight. And as Mr. Tunseth said, we had a great meal at the Apollo today, and the staff was amazing. Chief Bracken, thank you. Appreciate it. We heard from Dana Paperman from the Senior Center. Wonderful lady she is. We're lucky to have her. And also I wanted to thank the borough staff that we have here in the audience that came, and the borough staff that brought all this and set this up and made this happen today. So I want to thank them also. And everyone that's driving home tonight, be safe. That's all.
Thanks, Brent. Mr. Ribbons.
Thank you, President Johnson. Perhaps, Mr. Hibbert, you could try the bingo size since you like that so well. I'd like to reiterate what the other assembly members have said about how much we appreciate the invitation to Seward. My wife and I have spent quite a bit of time in Seward over the years, starting back when the Alpha Helix was still docked on here. We still continue to come here frequently during the summer, so I appreciate it. Unfortunately, my wife couldn't make this trip. Tonight, I have the opportunity of having probably the most boring assembly comment, though. I am providing notice of consideration of ordinance 2023-19-36 at the next regular assembly meeting on May 7, 2024. Thank you, President Johnson.
Thank you, Peter. Vice President Cook.
Thank you, and thanks Seward for having us here. I also wanted to thank Dana Paperman for the Senior Center. If you've not heard of their snack elves, you need to ask her about what a snack elf is, and find out who's doing that, because I guess they will deliver if you ask nicely, I guess. I mean, she said they deliver all over, so I would ask about that. I also wanted to share that KPED, the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District, will be having their industry overview forum in Soldotna at the Sports Center on 4/25/24. And you do have to pre-register by the 19th. So if it's something you're interested in, go to kped.org, I believe it is, and it's right there on that front page. You can go and sign up for that. If you've never gone, it's very interesting. You will definitely learn about some of the big projects that are coming to our peninsula, all over the peninsula, here, Homer, Central Peninsula, all the areas. And then I was going to share a little bit about, I usually share a little bit of personal things, and I did go to Sohi's promenade. I didn't actually go to prom. My wife tried to talk me into it, because she teaches there. But anyways, I went to the promenade, and one thing I noticed there, I had two students that were my kids that went to it. But what I really noticed is how full our auditorium was. That auditorium holds about 800 people. It wasn't 800 people, but I bet there was at least half that in there. And I will tell you, I've gone to almost all of the promenades because my wife teaches there. And I will tell you, we are starting to get a lot of people coming back and doing things, and it just makes me happy to see everybody out and about and getting involved in their communities, so I just want to share that. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate the community of Seward, of course, one of the most beautiful places on the Kenai Peninsula, in fact, in all of Alaska, in fact, in all of America, right here in Seward. I also appreciate the Seward wrestling team. I have a special place in my heart for wrestling, of course, and I noticed that the name Van Buskirk was one of the young men today, and I remember not long after I wrestled, there was a Van Buskirk that wrestled who was real good as well, and I'm assuming there's probably some relation there. And I appreciate Mayor Michicki calling the auction at the Ninilchik Fair fundraiser. That was very good. He did a very good job. And he's right. He was almost persuaded my wife into bidding on some silly railroad trip somewhere. But I pointed out to Mrs. Johnson that before you go spending money, you ought to try your hand at dip knitting, which is what set knitters have been turned into, I understand. So we are maybe going to bid on next year's project depending on how she does dip knitting. And speaking of Mrs. Johnson, she and I will be celebrating 49 years of happy marriage. And guess where we will be on 49 years? We'll be May 4th right here in this building. Because on our anniversary, it turns out that the Kenai Peninsula Historical Association is holding its biannual meeting right here in the historical building room downstairs. And so when you've been married 49 years, what are you going to do? You're going to go to a historical meeting, of course. And with that, our next meeting is on May 7th in the Betty Glick Assembly Chambers in Soldotna. We are adjourned. Yeah, goodness.
Bring the camera over.
I'm trying really, really hard. I appreciate you doing your part. I appreciate you saying
We don't get anybody. Didn't give any names. Could be anybody.
Yeah.
So, really appreciate you guys. At least you know, she and Soldotna getting ready to open
I said I appreciate him telling me that they're passing the ordinance because I'm obsessed and weird, not because I'm a threat. And he said he didn't give me names, it could be anybody. Obsessed and weird, but they didn't give him any names. He said he didn't give any names, so he doesn't mean names. Well, he knows who he names. So he's been lying to me for 7 months. Why stop now? No. You should go ask him when that next meeting's going to be. He's going to take off.
See you tomorrow? Yeah. Are you?
Be obsessive over here.
Right.
So are you with publication?
Oh, okay. So there's just kind of fundraiser for doing that. And then all that money went to so they set up all the businesses. Literally, bring the gym into the whole businesses. And then one of the big
fundraiser on the 11th. We could still use a few items. They've had a tough time. They've had a tough time getting
Italians of us. Yeah. And so they were selling those and that was stuff.
I'm gonna put some stuff on our.
Rally money for that.
but yeah.
No, you don't
we
talk to me,
broke
huh?
the-
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You said you're welcome anytime, remember?
Yeah, I'm welcome anytime, Mayor, huh? I guess he saw that last video I did. See that? He doesn't want to talk to me. He's a coward and a liar. That's why.
I probably picked up a lot of them from him because I spent a lot of time with the guy.
Public radio.
Yeah, right.
That is public radio.
Wait till you see my temper.
It's KPBL.
Yeah.
Almost sounds like a challenge.
I know Riley.
Thanks for having here. May the 4th, right?
May the 4th.
I might come to that.
Yeah, Doug Caffrey is gonna be speaking, he's a local historian.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, see you later.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming. I'm weird. My wife listens to weird the radio.
Right.
United States Constitution. It's a law, you can't be weird. Can you imagine, Joe, if it was legal to be weird?
I know, right?
Thank you very much. You too.
Well, it sounds like fun, but you know, they aren't maybe working the historical.
All right, you guys, I'm gonna sign out. I'll give you guys an update. I'm gonna cut this up, make a video out of it. These guys lied throughout the whole meeting, and I got proof. Stay tuned.
I appreciate you letting me know.
NewsNow Alaska signing out.
I heard Tony Pryor. And what time does it start?
Thanks for watching.
In these, so you could probably do this for a living and then go to that. But